Live. It's my behind the scenes look, and as you can see, I haven't dressed up or I haven't set up the studio like I normally do for a Me and My Health Up podcast because this is me on my journey on writing a book. It's challenging for me, and I'm enjoying the challenge, and I'm just sharing what it's like behind the scenes on going towards a goal that you've had for a long period of time and that you're finally bringing to fruition by making small steps. It's been something that I don't know how to write a book, and so I'm learning. I'm learning off people that have written books and getting some assistance in that front, but just making a start. And I think with anything I've done, it's always just been starting. And even though it's a bit rough, so my first recordings are really rough. Like I'm walking along the beach and talking into my phone, and there's the sound quality is not great. So certainly the first few recordings haven't been fantastic from a audio point of view, but there's certainly been collecting my thoughts and allowing me to uh, just start the thinking process and really capturing my thinking. And that's what I've just done. I just started writing, and I thought I'd share what I've written down in relation to happiness and the thoughts I've been having. And I thought I'd start with sharing the problem. So the challenge we have is that we think that we should always be happy. So that's far from truth and far from reality. And I think that's the reason why we get hung up is we're constantly thinking, I'm not happy, but we weren't always meant to be happy. So I shared in a previous recording that, from a prehistoric point of view, happiness was we'd get our prey. Okay, we'd feel great about getting the prey. We'll think, yeah, we're going to live another day, another few, or maybe a week, depending on how big the prey was. And so that was a great sense of accomplishment and achievement and success. And along coming with it is that feeling that, yeah, you're surviving. And in those periods, they would have encountered predators, and in some instances, they would have escaped the predator, and that would have been a great sense of relief and appreciating being alive. And with that, that would have been a flood of positive neurotransmitters, if you call them positive neurotransmitters, such as serotonin and dopamine, and yeah, so they would have felt great after escaping the predator, or some people would refer to it as relief. So that was like the prehistoric, and then with that survival linked, that survival mentality based on, um, yeah, that whether it's happiness or it's just feeling fulfilled that you're surviving, they would have encountered that regularly because that was their goal every day, was to get food and avoid the predator and to stay alive. And so they would have encountered those successes or milestones more frequently. Whereas in today's society, we we have, I guess, social media constantly showing us highlight reels of people's successes and milestones, and we see them as looking extremely happy and fulfilled. And then we're comparing them to us. And in that, most likely in that moment of comparison, you aren't celebrating your success, or sometimes you might be. And so, therefore, it's probably neutralized. But most often, when you're going through the highlight reels, is that you're seeing everyone else's success and milestones and thinking, oh, they're looking very fulfilled and very happy. However, I'm in my gap period before your next success or milestone. And so we're constantly comparing the success of others to where we're at. And most likely you're in that gap between achieving another success or another milestone. So that like gets back to the previous recording, is that happiness is a momentarily thing, and it comes every so often. So but what makes it so good, and again, the buzz or the sense of happiness is proportional to that period of gap and how much work was put in. So if you've got a large gap between the last success or the last milestone and you're putting a lot of work on, when you achieve the next accomplishment, milestone, or success, then there's a greater buzz. And that buzz, again, can be associated with happiness. And there's a flood, a huge amount of dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, and these neurotransmitters are going berserk, and the high can last quite a long period of time, depending on the mountain you've climbed. But however, the come down is huge because you're coming down from Mount Everest in terms of accomplishments. And then it's hard to get back to the everyday and to get back to that work. Whereas, I guess if you're having smaller milestones, smaller successes, and I think this is one of my points, is to recognize those smaller milestones and smaller successes so that you maintain this more sustainable feeling. And you could call that happiness. And I've mentioned that in a previous recording, is happiness is totally individual. So what I get happy about is different to what you get happy about, because it relates to what we value, what's important to us. And our milestones and successes are based on what's important to us, and that's different for everyone. So what makes us happy is going to be different. What makes us feel fulfilled is going to be different between one another. So I think that's another thing that we also get caught up in, is that we get caught up in seeing other people so happy doing what they're doing and think, if I do that, I will feel that way. But it's far from the truth, because if it's not something you value, then you might actually achieve it and then and get a sense of unfulfillment and don't feel as happy and don't feel as satisfied, because it's not something that's really important to you. So it's really important that you're setting out on your happiness journey, and setting milestones and success points based on what's most important to you. And it's a personal journey. And what I think is really important, and I mentioned this on a previous recording, is that we recognize the progress that we're making daily, the incremental progress, because that gets a sense of we're heading in the right direction. I'm heading towards the summit, but I feel really satisfied with what I've accomplished today. And it's that gratitude and thanks, giving thanks and recognizing those that are contributing to your growth along the way, that makes the whole journeys totally fulfilling. And it probably reduces that feeling, that void, that there's a huge void. I've got to accomplish this particular thing before I feel satisfied. Again, that can increase hunger and increase the desire to get to the summit. However, it can be so enduring and so difficult that you might give up on the way without recognizing the small milestones, the small wins on the way, to keep that sense of, yes, I'm moving in the right direction. I'm feeling very satisfied and fulfilled. So that's where I think people get really stuck, is that they've either set the wrong milestone or goal to say, when I get it, that is where I'm going to feel really happy. And they get there and it's someone else's, and it's thinking, well, it's not the same, because they're not you. So I think it's really important that you set your milestones and success accomplishments, tie it to what you value most. And then it's breaking it down into the daily actions and recognizing the daily actions, the daily progress that you're making towards the bigger picture. So for me, it's my daily actions are to actually think and write, and think and speak, and think and collate, and build my depository of information, and sharing my philosophies on happiness, and doing research. And like, I'll give you an example. Like, there's the longest study ever conducted on happiness, conducted by Harvard, started in 1936, was with a group of men, and they've continued that study, and they've studied the generations afterwards. They've incorporated women as well, and what they've linked fulfillment or happiness to is relationships. However, if you don't have a high value on relationships, then you got to mean it's completely individualized. So yes, relationships are important, an important part of health and well-being. However, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll get a buzz unless you have a high value on relationships. So it doesn't really matter what the research says. Ultimately, it's your happiness journey, and it's getting connected with you and finding out what's really important to you and understanding why that's so important to you and looking for all the different forms of which you can fulfill that why, that purpose, that meaning inside of you. Because then you'll recognize the feeling of fulfillment. And there's, with any sense of fulfillment, satisfaction, contentment, there's a feeling of happiness or joy. So, again, it's recognizing that on a regular basis. And so this is where gratitude comes into it. It's it's acknowledging, being aware of those around you and the contribution you're making towards your success, contribution others are making towards your success, and and just recognizing, I guess, the beauty of the world around you in at any point in time. And I think when we're more aware, more conscious, and less future orientated. So we can be very future orientated, just focusing on the summit. That's the summit, the summit, the summit. But then we miss everything around us and everything that's contributing to us getting to the summit. So I think that's a really important point in terms of maintaining sustainable, reducing the gaps between those momentarily periods of happiness or feeling buzzy or euphoric, is that uh, you, yeah, recognize and stay conscious to what's around you, and how the, I guess, there's this sort of collective that's working with you, and acknowledging that collective and acknowledging the incremental gains, because that's a very sustainable approach. And that way you're enjoying the journey as well as, obviously, once you hit the summit. It's like, for example, this book is, I guess, the summit for me, the finishing or publishing the book. However, that will be very momentarily feeling. Whereas if I enjoy this whole process, whether it be 1 to 2 or 3 years in writing, or 4 years, or a decade, then um, I've got I guess the whole decade that I'm embracing, immersing myself in, and taking, hopefully, you along as the listeners or the readers or the followers along on this journey. And I'm hoping that you're implementing little things or little insights that I'm sharing in writing this book. You don't need to wait for the finished published publication. What you might recognize is it's all these little insights that I'm sharing along the way that are more helpful than actually reading the book. So it's a journey, and you can come on this journey with me, and we can write this book together and live a more fulfilled life in the process, as opposed to thinking that I'll only be happy once the book's published. I'm enjoying every share, every period of inspiration. I'm enjoying, sharing that journey with you and showing how raw it is in terms of it's not perfect. I'm, got these thoughts, and sometimes they contradict themselves, but it's the whole processing, and I'm actually articulating that. So yeah, so if you've got any stories to share around your views in terms of your philosophies on happiness, I'd love to hear them. It'd be great to have a collective of stories and shares and insights, because obviously then it's more appealing to others, because some people will relate better to your story than my stories, or your philosophy compared to my philosophies. So yeah, it'd be great for you to give me feedback on a regular basis, and become part of this book writing adventure that I'm on. So yeah, thank you for continuing to support me or follow me, and I'll continue to share insights. And I think that was pretty much what I wanted to share today in terms of the notes I'd taken. Um, but yeah, in summary, it's really important that you're pursuing summits, accomplishments, milestones that are based on what's most important to you, and not copying others. And then also realizing when others are sharing their highlight reels, that there's a whole lot behind that, behind the scenes. There's a whole lot of work that's gone into that. Um, and it's that gap that, and the greater the gap, the more amount of work, the greater the feeling at the end, right? Um, but what I'm saying is that you can narrow that gap by having more awareness of the progress you're making, the incremental gains you're making, and the support, acknowledging the support around you in moving towards that ultimate goal. and yeah, just being conscious and more in the now as opposed to future orientated and thinking that I'll only be happy once I achieve that milestone, thinking that I can be fulfilled all the way along this journey. And the milestones just, yeah, great. But, you can actually have that feeling all the way along. So, um, yeah, in summary, the bigger the gap, the harder the climb, the more work you put in, the greater the buzz. However, with the greater the buzz comes the greater I guess, the other side, the come down from the other side. And then it can appear then to achieve a greater buzz, because then we want to get a greater sense is that it's a bigger climb and you're more aware of the work that needs to be put in, and you might not be willing to put that work in because you're not acknowledging those small successes. You just see the climb or the gap far too great to pursue another summit. And so then you become stuck. However, you'll be much better off if you're focusing on the smaller incremental gains towards the greater picture. And then you can have, this feeling of fulfillment, satisfaction, contentment, happiness, joy all along the way, as opposed to just waiting at the end, because the end may never come, or the end form may change and morph and be different. And so it's just allowing more the flow of life and enjoying every day, as opposed to waiting for that big day or waiting for that big milestone, because that gap can be just extraordinary, and that can become too daunting, too difficult, too challenging, and you can give up. So I'd much rather you be more consciously aware of those incremental progresses you're making and the contribution of others are making, and that you feel the momentum, the build together, and you go on the journey together. So that's what I wanted to share in terms of today's little segment. I'll continue to write down thoughts and share them, and hopefully be able to collect these thoughts and write something more coherent. But I'm just sharing the process behind the scenes, because ultimately I want you to start on big goals, and then enjoy the journey towards it. Yeah, so this is hopefully providing some motivation, some um, uh, belief that you can achieve bigger things and things that you've never accomplished. Like, I've never written a book. I've got no skills or background in writing books. I'm just going on a journey with you. So it's going to be, I don't know how long, but I'm just going to enjoy the process and continue uh, to focus on the process, which is to think right, critique, um, collate, simplify. Yeah, so it's just going to be this constant process. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy this. Please give me feedback, and I'm glad that this is going to be sounding a whole lot better for those that are listening. So, until next time, I think, yeah, recording 6 is next. Yeah, continue to go on your journey. Think about your milestones, your accomplishments, and how you can recognize the smaller incremental progress, the process, and recognize that progress on a daily basis.